Hey, it's Jeremy from Jeremy.net. I'm a comic book artist, writer, creator, self-publisher, and I share my creative process here with you online. If you enjoy this channel, if you enjoy these live streams, like to get additional bonus live streams twice a month, you can become a Patreon subscriber for as little as $2 a month. Head on over to patreon.com/Jeremy. It's patreon.com/GERIMI. If you'd like to get a free digital sketchbook, work in progress animated GIFs delivered right to your inbox, blog posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me creatively, you can sign up for my free monthly newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comic books, or if you're digitally on Kindle, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. That'll forward you to my Amazon author page. You can pick up my books there. Okay, so last week we had a conversation and some viewers asked about drawing with charcoal pencil. So I decided we're going to go into we're going to do some fixing bad figure drawing. So we're going to hop over and look at some of my previous figure drawing. And I'm going to walk you through my process. So before we do that, one thing, and I actually meant to look this up before starting the stream, and I apologize, I'm just remembering to do it now. But I am going to grab a video from my figure drawing instructor, Karl Gnass, because I realized that I should probably explain to you how to sharpen a charcoal pencil. And Karl has a great video series on that. And even though I'm going to walk you through my process, I want to link to his video, because not only is his video about how to sharpen a pencil, but he walks you through the fundamentals of using charcoal pencil, using light and tone to build and construct a figure, which, you know, I'll walk you through the process of how I use a charcoal pencil, but his is definitely a more comprehensive, more nuanced explanation, and he's my go-to for learning how I've learned to approach the figure with working in charcoal pencil. So let me find that, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to post a link in the description for his video, and then hang on here. I'm going to post a description. I'm going to post it in the chat, and then I'll post it in the description after the live stream. So I am just copying the URL, and you're going to see over in the chat here. And I see Dylan is in the chat already. Hey, Dylan. Hey, Jeffrey. Good to see you guys. There's a little bit of a change of schedule. I'm going to be busy tomorrow, so I thought I didn't want to skip, because I also, now that we're going into the holidays, I'm not sure if this will be the last stream of the year or not. So I wanted to at least get one more in here before the holiday madness takes over. But anyway, the video that I was talking about, the sharpening a pencil, I just posted that in the chat. So let me first show you one of my pencils. I'm going to show you what a sharpened one looks like before I begin to sharpen, so I can explain to you what I'm doing and why. Let me just put a little commentary in there in the chat also. I'm curious whether the sound of me tapping the keys is showing up on the mic, because it feels very ASMR. It's very soothing to me, that sound. Anyway, so get over here. I'm going to need my glasses because I need to scoot away from the keyboard, but I still need to be able to see the camera. So this is a sharpened pencil, and it is a General's 4B charcoal pencil. You typically will use anywhere from a 2B to a 6B. I don't use any H's because charcoal, one of the benefits of it is it's very soft and it's very painterly. So it allows you to really kind of spread and blend properly. And it really allows you to work with a wide range of tones. And I feel that the 6B is very dark and it's kind of hard to control early on. I feel like a 4B is a nice middle ground. I'll usually only do a 2B if I plan to do something that's very long and really requires me to take time to build up tones. So as you can see, the idea of this is that it's kind of a soft, rounded cone. So it's not just going straight to a point like a stiletto. I have had a bad habit in the past of sharpening them too much in that direction. And also, the other thing to note is that it's not just the tip of the pencil that's sharpened. I've I've cut away and sanded away quite a bit of the wood leading up to the point. And you can actually see just the base color of the pencil. That orange is all the way up here. In fact, I have more exposed wood than I have the actual charcoal exposed. The reason for that is because the goal of sharpening a pencil for charcoal figure drawing is that you want to be able to lay the pencil flat on the surface of the paper. If it's laying flat on the surface of the paper, it allows you to get a very, very broad tone. And the slight conical rounding of the tip means that you can control whether that is a smooth tone, or if you lift the pencil a little bit, you can make one edge of the tone hard by using the tip of the pencil, but you can still get a tone. So if you were to just have the pencil rounded, but then you have a big chunk of wood, like if this wasn't rounded, you'd have a big gap. It would make the pencil sit up. It would just make the tip naturally rise up if this wood wasn't sanded down. So that's the purpose of sanding all that down. So I'm going to show you now. So here is an unsharpened pencil. And again, like I said, the Karl Gnass link that I put you through, he walks you through this. He is where I learned this process from. And I definitely recommend you go and watch his videos on how to do this. So one of the most important things I learned from Karl is that you don't want to cut away at the pencil. What you want to do is you want to hold the blade still and you want to pull the pencil against it. So it shaves it off in smooth, controlled strips. So let me just position my garbage can underneath there. So if I want to start peeling away, so if you guys have any questions so far, feel free to ask. But the reason why just the sharpening of the pencil alone is so important is because if you don't have this sharpened so that you can work with the lead exposed as it is, then you can't make tones. And being able to make soft, rounded tones, I feel, is one of the essential aspects of drawing with charcoal pencil. And by the way, that video, that link that I posted to Karl Gnass, well, the tip just broke there, which means I'm going to have to expose a little bit more. And that happens. That's actually one of the downsides of working in charcoal pencil is they're delicate and they break. sometimes you'll get a whole box and half of the pencils will have breaks all the way through, and it's a real pain in the ass to get them, sharpened, when every time you go through, every like 5 minutes you're breaking them. Usually what I'll do is I will have like 4 or 5, well, no, I usually have 3 sharpened at any given time. So if I get a couple of breaks in a session, I just move on to the next one, When it comes to sharpening, I usually will have like a 3 break rule, where if a pencil breaks 3 times in the process of sharpening it, I will just presume that it's broken all the way through and throw it away. Which can be frustrating if you have a brand new pencil like this and it breaks 3 times before I even have a chance to use it. It's like, that whole pencil was just wasted. Even this, I've already exposed, like, I'm exposing a little bit of wood just so that I can sand this down from, once I switch from the blade to sandpaper to actually shape the tip. But exposing the wood is more important to me, I think, really, than just getting, like, really all I needed is that little amount that's up there at the top. I probably have already carved away too much of the wood at the tip. And that's another thing. You have to be careful not to cut this down too much, because you still need enough to actually support the pencil. Otherwise, that also will lead to breakage. Let's see here. So Dylan in the chat says, okay, I've been moving the blade and it's hard to sharpen the pencil. Yeah, that's one of the big challenges right there, is that if you're moving the blade against it, it feels a lot more like you're attacking the pencil, and you tend to break it more because you're using more force than you need. That's the big advantage of using this method, is just that it allows you to control how much pressure you're using. And I see Hosseini in the chat. Thank you for joining us. Welcome. Doing a little bit of a figure drawing here. Well, starting with the basics. So now the next step will be the sharpening, and then we'll get into the actual drawing. Well, this step is the sanding. So my goal here now is I start by actually trying to, before I even get to the charcoal, I want to smooth out that exposed wood. And different people have different techniques for approaching this. I tend to do this up and down sanding, because the left and right, I feel like I tend to put too much pressure on the actual, on the charcoal, and I'll tend to break it. Whereas if I'm going up and down like this, I'm pushing, it's like I'm always pushing the pencil, the charcoal, basically into the wood, as opposed to scraping in a way that it's going to snap it. Now, mind you, I still get quite a few snaps as I work. I, will frequently break a pencil once or twice just in the sharpening before I even get to drawing. In fact, that's how a pencil will get a long life with me, is it breaks twice while I sharpen, and then it doesn't break a third time, and then I'll use it and I'll get pretty far with it, and then the next time that I need to sharpen it, it'll break twice. So the breaks are far enough apart that it may be broken in a bunch of places, but as long as it doesn't break more than 3 times while I'm sharpening it, it lives. It stays in my toolbox until I use it all up. So as I'm doing this, I don't know if you can notice, but I'm also spinning it. I'm slowly rotating the pencil as I sharpen it. And that, let me get this light a little bit more over here. So that also allows me to get a relatively smooth sharpening all the way through. All right, we're almost there with this guy. And also, this might seem kind of boring and mundane and pedestrian, but I also try to usually sharpen my pencils at the end of a drawing session, so that when I start a session, I'm starting with a full set, 3 sharpened pencils that are ready to go. I like to be able to just dive in. And then the sharpening, usually I do that at the end as kind of a preparatory, kind of a decompression, little meditation on the work I've done, and setting myself up so I can dive right in my next session. And this is particularly helpful if you're going to a figure drawing workshop or a figure drawing class in person, because in those you can hear all the people sanding and sharpening and scraping and getting their tools ready before class. And if I'm running late, it's nice to be able to roll in and have all of my tools ready to go. So now the tip is not perfectly rounded. And I don't obsess about that specifically because in the course of drawing, this little bit over here that's sort of broken off, that's going to get rounded just through the act of drawing. There's not much point in me really trying to get a perfectly pointed tip, because that's going to get rubbed down over the course of a drawing within the first few minutes anyway. And to go back to that other thing that I was showing you at the beginning, now if I sit this down on the surface, it lays relatively flat. And that's what I want. That's what will allow me to get a very broad tone. So let's see here. Comment in the chats here. So Hosseini asks, Jeremy, have you seen Bern Hogarth Tarzan? Do you think it's useful to draw from it? More for anatomy drawings of Bern Hogarth. Let's see here. He says the books only have some pictures. I wish there were more. Well, the first art book first anatomy book I ever purchased in high school was Bern Hogarth's Dynamic Anatomy. And I learned a lot from that book. That said, Bern Hogarth, a lot of anatomy teachers, not art teachers, but teachers who specifically teach anatomy and figure drawing, are very critical of Hogarth's book. And now I agree with their criticisms, and I don't really use Hogarth's book anymore, but I still think it's a decent book for beginners. But the criticism is that Hogarth draws all of the muscles flexed. And what I mean by that is when I have my arm bent like I'm, making a bicep, my bicep is flexed. Underneath, my tricep is relaxed. In most of Hogarth's drawings, he draws it so that all of the muscles, he's trying to make it clear where the muscles are. But in that clarification, he's enlarging them. So a muscle that should be relaxed appears as though it's contracting. Like all of the muscles feel like they are contracted all at once. And the reason why his work was so influential in comic books, which, it's the main thing that brought me to wanting to improve my figure drawing, is because we have superheroic men and women, these idyllic characters with rippling muscles, and everything does look super inflated, kind of like the superhero suits where actors all have muscles built into them. So that's kind of what you get with Hogarth. And a lot of figure drawing instructors and teachers are critical of that because they say that it doesn't look as naturalistic. I will give you 2 book recommendations that I think are, I'll give you 2 book recommendations I think are better than the Hogarth book. Let's see here. So one, I would say, is The Figure by Walt Reed. And he's one of the instructors from the famous artist course that Norman Rockwell was a part of. And this book, I feel like it's one of the best books on just the fundamentals. Literally, the cover of the book walks you through the entire process, starting with conceptual volumes, like it's a very simple wooden mannequin, refining that to actually have more of the flow of the figure, then understanding the anatomy that's underneath where the landmarks are, and then building muscle and light and tone on top of it. The book basically walks you through that entire process step by step, and it gives you multiple examples of each phase to practice from until you get comfortable with each phase, and it builds on top of itself. The other book I would recommend is The Atlas of Human Anatomy for the Artist. So this one is an anatomy book, and it's a very deep dive in terms of going in and understanding anatomy. It's very, very detailed in terms of the muscles and the bones. But then in each section, it has sort of simple sketches breaking down so you can practice these things. Now, near me, I also have George Bridgman's Guide to Life Drawing. And that is a very, very good book. But what I learned over time studying from Bridgman is that I don't necessarily think that his books are incredibly valuable, but I don't know if they are great for beginner artists. Only because I see Dylan put in the chat that he said I didn't know that I was at a gun show. Ha ha ha! Very funny, Dylan. The thing about, let me just grab the book. So this is a great book. I do not in any way want to say that I do not recommend this book for artists. But the challenge that I have found after many years, because I discovered George Bridgman, I was shown his work when I was in high school by other comic book artists, experienced comic book artists who were trying to teach me. And the thing that is difficult about Bridgman is that a lot of his drawings are very blocky, and they don't necessarily look, it's not that they look visually like the thing that you're trying to draw. It's that they are diagrams to explain what it is you're looking at. And I found that you kind of have to know sort of the fundamentals of basic volume and gesture and some basic anatomy, because you need to come to Bridgman with some analysis. You can't just copy it and understand what you're copying. You kind of have to know what it is you're looking at, and then understand, once you know what it is anatomically that you're looking at, Bridgman unlocks all kinds of understanding of the actual structure of anatomy, like understanding how it exists in three-dimensional space. But trying to figure that out when you don't even know necessarily just the basics, it can be very, very challenging and frustrating. So I would actually recommend those other two books first, and maybe Bridgman is something you come to. I mean, I think it may be worth getting the book and then trying to experiment sketching from it. When you get frustrated, go back to other books like the Walt Reed book, and then come back and forth. The time that I really that Bridgman really started to make sense to me, I went through and I had his Constructive Anatomy book, and I had heard that the painter Frank Frazetta had copied that book. And so I tried copying Constructive Anatomy, and it was something where once or twice a year, I would take one of Bridgman's books, because the individual books used to come out in small, like 100-page, smaller books. So there was like 4 or 5 books, and those are all sort of collected in this big, massive book that I have now. And what I would do is I would just take one of those books and I would just draw from it for 30 minutes a day, just copying the pages until I drew the entire book. And I did that, I want to say 4 or 5 times over a number of years. And that really helped me understand Bridgman, but it took time. I had to come to it. So let's see here. I'm going back to this other question because I realized I didn't answer it before. So Hosseini asks, are you against lead holders, Jeremy, or the quality of the lead is bad? He says at least it's like that in Iran. Well, let's see. I am not. There's 2 kinds of lead holders. There's the lead holder that, well, I use a pencil extender, meaning that this just takes a normal pencil, and when it gets short, it allows you to put that, slide the pencil in there and continue to use just a tiny little nub of a pencil. It allows you to keep using it until really you get almost down to the tip of it. So I love these. Now, in terms of lead holders, I don't have one handy in front of me. I use them. I don't tend to use them for figure drawing mainly because the leads that go in them are not thick enough or as thick as I would like for figure drawing. One of the other advantages is that you have, that's why people like using charcoal sticks, which I don't have. This isn't a charcoal stick, it's a Conte crayon, but it's a nice thick piece of Conte that can give you sort of a nice broad drawing tone. And that tends to be what people like, larger pieces of medium for working with. Lead holders tend to be thicker than the lead of just a normal number 2 pencil or a mechanical pencil, but I will use them for illustrating comic book work. So I'll use them for doing more detailed control work. And yes, the quality of the lead is definitely, essential. If it's bad quality lead, then you're just going to it's going to make it harder. Your tools are going to fight against you working wise. But the direct answer to your question is no, I am not against lead holders. I use them. I just don't use them for figure drawing. And you're very welcome. Hosseini says, thank you for the book recommendation. He said the first book was new to me. That book, I discovered that, going back to the figure drawing instructor, Karl Gnass, that I studied with, another student in his class shared that book with me, and I had never seen it before. But once I picked it up, I was like, this book really gets into the fundamentals. So I dove into that. And while I'm mentioning it, I was going to say, Karl Gnass, you can get to his website from his YouTube channel, that link that I put in there, and I'll put a link to it in the description. But he teaches online. So he currently teaches classes where people can sign up anywhere in the world. And if you're not in a time zone where you can catch the class live, he'll have replay so that his students can watch the video and draw with it later on and still send in homework and participate in the class, even if they're not in there live. So it's definitely worth checking out. I'll share all of those. I'll post those in the description for this video when we're done with the live stream. And I see Martin's in the chat. Hey. Good to see you, Martin. All right. So now let's get to the actual using of the tool. So let me get into position here. When I am drawing, let me see how close I can get. The challenge here is getting the camera close enough that you guys can get a really good view of what I'm working on, but not have the camera be in my way visually while I'm working, which is a bit of a challenge. Let's see here. Let me just scoot myself over. All right. Let's see here. Dylan says, I'm going to have to go. Another YouTuber went live. Might be able to pop in later. No problem. Always good to see you, Dylan. Enjoy. Have a good time. Let's see here. Jim Lujan is in the chat. Mr. Lujan says, a question for the maestro. Dear Maestro J, says, when you're drawing a character in a story, how do you make sure they look the same facial features in each panel throughout the story? Number one, I am bad at that. I'm just going to admit it. Full stop. It is one of my weaknesses. I need to get better at being more consistent in terms of character consistency throughout a book. But I mean, I'm sure, as you know, model sheets are a huge benefit when it comes to consistency. So what I usually like to do is start with, let's just say that you've done some sketches and you've got whatever, you've got some Nosferatu vampire character, and he's just got like the huge goofy fangs, droopy brow, let's give him some ears. What it comes down to is giving him distinct features and then creating a map of where those features are located. So let's say that he has a comb over. I was going to give him a widow's peak, but let's say he's got a comb over. A sad vampire. And then also, let's say he's got bags under his eyes. This guy's not getting enough iron in his diet. He's very sickly looking. So what I would do once I have these features sort of blocked out, and actually let me get his neck in there. He should have a hunch. He definitely should have a hunch. So let's put his shoulders up here. So let's say you start by doing a bunch of sketches, and the point of the sketches is just to get a look for a character that you enjoy. The way to improve the odds of being consistent, I'm not saying you're going to guarantee it, but the way to improve the odds of keeping your character consistent from page to page is once you get a drawing that you're relatively happy with, you would want to maybe take, well, yeah, I see that's a really good comment there. Jim says, I find drawing profiles that match the front views can be a challenge. Oh, yeah, definitely. What I usually will do is I would either take something like this, and then I would probably be drawing this digitally so that I could drop a grid on top of it. But even if you draw it traditionally, you can draw it and then either put graph paper on top of it, put it on a light box on top of graph paper. But the idea is you want to start with that grid. And I'm drawing this grid by hand. To do this correctly, you would want to use graph paper or some sort of existing printed grid that you can trace on top of. And the idea is that the grid now gives you measurements for the character's dimensions. And then you can say, the same way that as a general rule, you can say, all right, a figure is 8 heads tall. You might say, all right, how many grids tall is this character's So you might say, all right, so from head to chin, this character is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. To make life easier, we're just going to say 8. So you might say he's 8 squares high, but then you might say that his ears project up 1 square higher than that to 9 heads. And then you might say the same thing, his chin is down here. So you might say 8 heads, and then say the tooth goes down another 3. So his tooth, that big old vampire gopher tooth or pair of teeth goes down farther than even his ears go up. So once you have the elements, and now along with that, all of the other things, you say, all right, the eyes are smaller than 1 square, but if you include the eyes, the eyebrow, and then the bags underneath, you can say that takes up an entire square. You can say that the nose is longer than 3 squares. Let's say it's 3.5 squares. All of these things you did your drawing just for fun to get your look. Now you're getting all of these proportions down. These proportions are now how you work on getting your character consistent. This is when you would now, pardon me. The next step now would be to start with what you normally see with a model sheet. I'm just going to rough this in really quick. Instead of drawing all 8, I'm just going to draw 4. But from here, you would go through and say, all right, profile, and you know about the size of him, how tall now the head is, you know how long the fangs are, you know where the nose lines up. So this is how I would get all of those features consistent in a model sheet. And then once completing the model sheet, I would probably try to, before necessarily doing a comic book page, I would try to do maybe 1 or 2 sheets of just expressions, just drawing the character angry, happy, sad, surprised. Walk through as many different emotions as possible and drawing the character at different angles. You might say, I'm going to do a model sheet of angry. And you might do angry worm's eye view, angry 3/4 shot, angry looking up at him dramatically. Go through that whole variety of just one emotion in a bunch of different angles. And once you get used to drawing the character and you get those proportions close enough that they start feeling like something that you can do kind of as a shorthand. Once you get to the point where you don't have to think about the proportions as much anymore, that's when you're ready to go. Now that's how I would solve that problem. In the past, I have neglected doing all of that extra work. And that is why, the problem that you even pointed out, Jim, that's a problem that I have as well. And it's a problem that I know how to fix. I just need to not be lazy and actually do the steps. But point being is that I would, let me see if I can turn this a little bit more so you're getting more of a straight on view. All right, that's a little bit better. Let me tilt this. But my larger point is simply start with that grid, work out the basic proportions, do a turnaround, which is what this is the start of. A turnaround a proper turnaround would include not just a front and a profile, and not just a 3/4, but a 3/4 turning away. You may not necessarily have to do a 3/4 from all sides, but basically profile, front, back, 3/4 front, 3/4 back. That's enough. You could just to be thorough and for extra practice, draw a 3/4 to the left, 3/4 to the right, 3/4 back left, and 3/4 right left. You could do all of that. Let's see here. Let me go back up because I see more comments that I have missed. Okay. Dylan said, I'm back. It's just a notification, so I got 30 minutes. You know what? That's good because we're already at about 40 minutes here. So we're probably only going to go for an hour altogether. So we'll probably be done before your other stream starts. So it'll be good timing. Dylan also says, I so want to see the new Nosferatu movie. I am looking forward to that as well. I've only seen a couple of Robert Eggers movies, but I do like them. I liked The Lighthouse, even though it's a very strange movie. I liked the, I forget the Viking one with Alexander Skarsgård. I forget the name of it, but it was really good. I still haven't seen The Witch, but I'm definitely looking forward to that Nosferatu film, although I'm probably going to see it once it comes out on streaming. My wife and I don't usually go to the theaters that much anymore. Let's see here. Hosseini says, I'm not a complete beginner at figure drawing, but my progress stopped at basic volumes. I never get arm and back anatomy and muscles, for example. What should I do when I don't have any progress? Well, there's two things. First off, consistency. I find that if you draw for a little bit and then you hit a wall and you stop and then you come back, even though you don't forget everything you've learned, there's always a bit of having to catch up and reboot and get back to where you were. And usually what happens is by the time you get back to where you were, you're frustrated again and you stop again. I would say that if you can commit to drawing for a half hour a day, every day, or if it's only 3 days a week, trying to get in 3 days a week, I would say no less than 3 days a week. An hour would be great, but if you're super busy, then 30 minutes, three times a week should be your bare minimum. And what I do is I try to focus. I hyper focus on whatever I'm having trouble with. I do not have the best anatomy of, as an artist. I am still a student. Even though I publish books, comic books and tell stories, I am constantly going to classes. I am constantly studying from art books. Like I said, on my Patreon, I've been doing a long-running series where I'm working through this book, and I go through, page by page, and I copy the pages, not with the goal of producing an exact copy of this drawing. I copy it with the goal of understanding. I'm trying to decipher what he's trying to teach in each picture, and then try to get that down on the page. So that studying on a regular is the first thing that I recommend. Now, the next thing is actually identifying what it is that you're struggling with, and then focusing really, really hard on it. Like, for going really detailed. For instance, you mentioned I never get arm and back anatomy and muscles. You said as an example. Where's that other book that I brought up? Well, first off, the great thing that I like about Walt Reed's book is that this is a book about the basic drawing. In fact, let me see if I can find a page that I think gives a really good example. So one of the things that he really teaches is just how to do simple mannequins, simple constructions, and builds detail from there. That's this page is sort of the backbone of his process. He teaches you how to do this both in terms of observing the figure and doing it from the imagination. That's what this book is about. But it does have anatomy in it. Let me see if I can find a section that I can show on the screen. Okay, so for instance, you know, he does have anatomical details in here where but the thing is, he doesn't show you every single muscle in the body in this book. He shows you just enough anatomy. For instance, like here in the arm, you mentioned you have trouble with arms. It's not every single muscle in the arm. You know, he gives you like 10 muscles. And if you can figure out those 10 muscles in the arm and then figure out like 10 muscles in the leg and 10 muscles in the torso, that's enough. You don't need to know every single muscle in the body. You really don't. You just need to know like the majors. To be honest, there's probably like about altogether in the whole human body, there's probably about 20 or 30 muscles that you really probably should know. The rest of it, you just need to know like sort of the general shape of it. And what I recommend is then practice. And when I say practice, what I mean is it doesn't have to be this book, but get an anatomy book that lists muscles. And then what you want to do is, for instance, like this drawing right here. I wish I had one that was on the right-hand side so I could keep it sort of out of the way. Let me zoom the camera out a little bit so I have some room to both draw and show you what I'm looking at. Let's see here. Dylan says, those teeth are hella long. Well, yeah, hey, I'm going for a vampire. I got to make it, I got to make it read. The whole point of character designs, you don't want like wimpy. You want to do although that would actually also be a equally funny character design to do a vampire with really wimpy like teeth. So I would start with just a simple volume. So I'm drawing this picture right here. Just a simple volume in the general pose. Forearm, upper arm and forearm, and then the palm. That's it. And I might just add enough of a cylinder in there to give you the sense of the three-dimensionality of the form. And then I would come in and say, all right, let's start with the deltoid. Now, when I'm drawing this, I'm not thinking about the names of the muscles. I'm just trying to get in here and look at this and say, what is the shape, the two-dimensional shape? And then I try to say, what is the three-dimensional shape, trying to give it a top and a side and a front. And then do the same, working down the arm. At this point, it's probably worthwhile for me to bring the camera closer so you can get a better look at what I'm doing. I wish this camera zoomed in more. Oh, that's what I need to do. I need to slide this down so I can bring you guys in nice and close. That's better. So my point is if you're having trouble with something like moving from basic construction to anatomy, the way to study anatomy is to get a book that has some anatomy. It doesn't have to be every single muscle. And in fact, if you're having trouble with anatomy, it's probably better to not have a super detailed book right away, because you will get lost in the anatomy and you'll just draw a bunch of mush.
Whereas if you have a book that just does the dominant muscles, then you can just focus on the major muscles and drawing them as a simple form. Like even this, I'm taking the ring finger and middle finger and I'm mushing them together, which is in the reference. You know, that's the in the book that I'm drawing from. They do that where they kind of combine they're not combining them. The two fingers are pressed together. But if you think about it mentally as not just two fingers that are pressed together, but to draw them as one unit, it allows you to think of them as a volume. And you always want to be thinking both about, excuse me, you want to be thinking about the three-dimensional sense of volume along with the shape of whatever it is you're drawing anatomically. Now, once I get to this stage, what I would then do is I would go back and I would try to not look at the anatomy book, and I would go through and I would label deltoid, bicep, triceps, I believe this is the brachioradialis. The one out here. See this whole, all of these muscles, there's actually like a set of extensors all on the outside. There's actually like 4 muscles that are pulled in together, and on the inside there's flexors that flex on the inside, there's extensors that extend on the outside. I don't know the names of all of these muscles. The forearm muscles, that's a whole thing. You could honestly just call this whole mass out here extensors. But the point being is to go through and label these things. And then I would actually go through, and for instance, the extensor carpi radialis, that's one of those things where I've seen a lot of books where, well, that's the name of that one, but there's another muscle that's right next to it called the brachioradialis, and older books call it the supinator longus. That's another thing. In anatomy books, older books like Bridgman calls it the supinator longus. More contemporary books call it the brachioradialis. My point is just you do actually need to do a little bit of research for some if you're using some older books, because older books have different names for some of the bones, for the muscles. I'm getting off on a tangent. Point is you draw it first, then you go back, and if you named something wrong, cross it out, write the correct name. And you just do that for all of the different areas of the body that you have trouble with. You do that with the arms, you do that with the back muscles, you do it with the legs. Any area you have trouble with, you practice the sketching, you practice the naming. Then you move to drawing it from a different angle, or maybe you move to a different body part and you come back and draw this again the next day, and you just keep repeating it until eventually you start to remember the names that you learn the anatomy by practicing the anatomy. And you can also add that to pretty much any aspect. Like let's say that you have trouble working with light and tone. You practice working with light and tone. All of these things, the point of practice is not just rote repetition. The point of practice is to identify the things that you don't know and then repeat the exercise of trying to learn and express that information. And you're going to fail. The failure is part of the process of learning. In fact, people often get frustrated at failure, and I really try to lean into that and tell people that all failure is it's an expression of where you need to grow your strengths. So I welcome failure because it shows me, oh, this is what I need to study. If you look at your failures to show you how to succeed, if there's something you keep failing at, then that's your knowledge telling you, I don't know this. I need to know more. Let's see here. Let me get caught up on the comments here. Hosseini says Nosferatu is a very old movie. Yes, it is. And I have seen the original black and white movie. There's a new movie that's coming out. I want to say it's coming out this month by a director named Robert Eggers. And it's a remake of the Murnau Nosferatu movie. But yeah, I definitely want to. I actually want to go back and revisit the original, but I'm looking forward to the new one. And you also mentioned Jean Cocteau's Beast from Beauty and the Beast. That I have never seen. I am familiar with it, but I've never seen it. And thank you for the recommendation. I'm going to go check it out. Let's see here. James mentions. I drew a bit last night. I've amassed quite a collection of art tools, some of which I'm willing to part with. My blue pencil that I like to use was getting short, so I'm glad I found an indigo one. I forgot about a few weeks back. That's always good to have extra tools, particularly if you're running low on one. So James says, do you think art is a skill or a talent? I think that it is mostly skill. There is talent in it. There are people who have a supernatural adeptness to the craft of making pictures, even whether they're trained or untrained. Some people just they can just tap into it. But those people are few and far between. Most of the people I know who make art, whether they're making it professionally or just making it for the joy of making it, have to work at it. So I do think that talent, I think that people say that talent's a myth. I don't agree with that. I think that talent is real. I think that talent does exist. And I think that talent plays a very, very small part in the careers of most professional artists. Mostly it's skill, and skill, again, skill is learned. Skill is learned and it's earned. You practice, you analyze, and you strengthen. So that's my overall thoughts in terms of talent versus skill. Let's see here. Dylan says, I've only seen The Witch, but I do want to see the Northman. Yes, The Northman is the other Robert Eggers movie that I saw. I have not seen The Witch. That's definitely on my list. I want to see that too. Problem is my wife has trouble with watching movies where animals are getting harmed, and you can tell something bad's going to happen to that goat from the trailer. But Northman was fantastic. I loved that. And Martin's in the chat. Hey. Martin says, practice makes progress. Very much. Absolutely agree. Co-sign on that. And Hosseini, you're very welcome. He says, thank you for the advice. And Herman is in the chat. Says, hey, Jeremy. Hey, peeps. Hope all is well. Yeah, things are good. Switching up. I need to figure out for sure if I'm doing any more live streams this year because things are getting crazy during the holidays. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to move the stream to today instead of Sunday. But if I do any more before the end of the year, well, I'll try to post in advance to give you guys a notice. But this might be the last one just because December always gets nuts and crazy. So let's see here. Herman says, I am always drawing the human form in thumbnails,
but the practice I'm working on is machinery and animal anatomy. Very difficult to draw, especially things like bikes, motorcycles. I suck. Well, that is, you're drawing hard stuff. Motorcycles, bicycles, animals, they're all difficult. They always say that the common joke in comics that the hardest thing to draw is a horse riding a bicycle. If you can draw a horse riding a bicycle, you're a phenomenal artist. Like if you can draw it well, because those are like the two things that artists have a hard time with. Cars actually, compared to bicycles and motorcycles, cars are actually relatively easy, because with cars, you're really just drawing a box, a rectangle, and then you're just carving into that rectangle. So you might divide it up between the cabin, the engine, and the trunk. And then from there, almost like the car designers will frequently start in profile. But if you were to start like this, you could almost say, all right, from here, you might draw a center line down the vehicle and say, all right, what's the profile of the car from the center? Work from the center out. So you might have the hood dip a little bit, windshield goes up, roof of the car goes back. I'm going to do a little cross to define the plane of the roof of the car. You know, vehicles are a little bit more simple, but you're drawing with animal anatomy. I mean, well, cars are a little bit more simple, but with motorcycles or animals, you're dealing with much more complex elements. And before you think that I have an amazing fundamental grasp of vehicles along with everything else I can draw, this is all stuff that I learned from Scott Robertson. You know, his most recent book is his How to Draw book. But I have worked in the toy industry for many years, and at one point it became necessary for me to draw vehicles. And he, being somebody who was a master at vehicle design, did a great book on how to draw Hot Wheels. So that book taught me a lot about drawing vehicles. Like, for instance, the way that we measure the human body in heads, he taught me that, you know, vehicles are designed, they're measured in wheels. So you might say, all right, how many wheels, instead of how many heads tall a human is, you would design vehicles in tires. Tires are the unit of measure for vehicle proportion. And this is a very, very bad diagram of it. So if you just were to Google Scott Robertson vehicle design, you'll find much better, or Scott Robertson vehicle proportion would probably be a better way to look up and see his actual examples of how to do this correctly, as opposed to just a quick thumbnail of me hacking this out. And also, Scott Robertson would have drawn that in actual proportion. Whereas, you know, if I bring this close to the screen, you'll see how wonky this vehicle is. Like, it's sort of in proportion in terms of it's relatively into a box, but that's all, it's out of perspective. It's definitely out of perspective, where Scott Robertson would draw accurate perspective by hand. I mean, that's kind of his big thing, is training your hand so that you can draw something that looks like you used a ruler, even if you're drawing freehand. And he'll, you know, well enough that it may not be perfect, but it will very much look like look accurate. Let's see here. Let's see here. Martin says all of us were on the road to art together. Yes, very true. And I enjoy having you guys here as company. Hey, and Chris is in the chat. So Chris, the whole thing about wanting to see how I use charcoal pencil, that's what all of this live stream has been about. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you made it. In the beginning of the stream, I started with how I sharpen a pencil and why. Jim Lujan asked a question about doing keeping figures in proportion. I did a quick diagram of that. We talked a little bit about anatomy, but if you have specific questions about drawing with charcoal pencil, now's the time to ask it, because I started at 10 instead of 11. So we're getting near the end here, but even if it's something I already covered, if I can do a quick demo to catch up on anything that you want to know, then now's the time to ask. Let's see here. Getting caught up on the comments here. Herman says, why is it not showing your? I hit the show button. There we go. Herman says, I've been drawing since 5 years old and have 2 art degrees, but just lazy when it comes to something I truly don't understand, like being able to see that item in 3D and creating 2D art of it. Well, you are aware of the problem. You've identified the problem. The problem is you're lazy in seeing things in 3D and creating 2D art of it. You know what the problem is, and I'm sure you know what the answer is, which is practicing it. So what I would challenge you to do is once a day, pick an object and just do a simple 3D sketch of it. For instance, so this brush, this is a hairbrush for cats, because we have 2 cats and they shed all over the place. You brush and then it has a little button to push the hair off. So what I would do if I were you is I wouldn't necessarily take this. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be a television remote. It could be a watch. Whatever it is, I would pick an object and once a day sit down and say, okay, first off, the base of the object is a disc. In order to draw, and that means learning how to draw ellipses. Learning how to draw ellipses is its own practice. It's a whole thing, and it's not something that is easy. In fact, I will tell you, learning to draw ellipses in perspective is probably one of the most frustrating things an artist can do. But once you learn how to do it, you'll have so much more control. So I would start with the fact of, all right, I know that it's a circle, so the ellipse is going to be a square. I would start with drawing a 3-dimensional square. Really, the best way to think of this is to think of it like you're drawing in Blender or SketchUp. Think of it as you are building a 3D model, and you start with the bounding box. And in this case, the bounding box has one bounding box for the brush part, and then underneath, so the handle does not come directly from here. The handle is underneath. So I would put a second bounding box underneath that. And I would try to measure out the proportion accurately. In this case, for the sake of the sketch I'm drawing here, I'm making it shorter. But realistically, this thing extends, if I'm drawing the proportions accurately, this thing would extend out farther. So you've got bounding boxes for 2 of the elements. And then I would start drawing into those bounding boxes. So I would put across along here to get the center of this box. And then where I know where the center is, I can put a cross between the front and the top. And then I can draw from one corner to another, one corner to another, basically rounding it. This is like a whole exercise in perspective, which is one of the most frustrating things for a lot of artists to study.
And you know what? Honestly, one of the things that we talked about earlier, getting an instructional book and then working through it page by page, I would say for something that, like for a challenge like you're talking about, Herman, I would get a book on perspective. And if you don't already have one, there's a lot of good ones out there. There's one called Perspective Made Easy by Ernest Norling. And that one was recommended by, oh God, I'm blanking on his name. He's an amazing watercolor artist, and I've took his perspective class. I apologize so much because he's a super nice guy and I really like him. I'm just blanking while I'm sitting here drawing in front of you. But one of the books that he recommended in his class is a book called Perspective. Perspective Made Easy, Norling. Look up that book if you don't have a good perspective book. But Herman, the greater point is practice. It's just sitting down, and you know that the bigger problem with all these things is the discipline. It's sitting down and doing the work to improve on the things that you have trouble with. But that's what you have to do. You just have to sit down and practice consistently. Daily if possible, but definitely multiple times throughout the week. Let's see here. Hosseini says exactly. Every time I went for anatomy heavy books, I got tired and stuck in the details. And yeah, Herman is on the same page with you. He says, trying to focus on one thing at a time or combine them. Yeah, these things, it's actually interesting that you said trying to focus on one thing or combine them. And you kind of actually want to do the opposite, which is you want to take really, really complicated things and break them down into its simplest element. When it comes to the figure, or whether it comes to, that's actually a better way to look at it. Say anything that you want to draw, anything, a horse, a human figure, a vehicle. You want to start by learning how to draw its bounding box. So let's say that I was going to draw a horse. So you would apply this same approach, whether it's a car, a horse, a person, which is here is a bounding box that represents the thing. Like you're drawing in Blender and you just create a cube. But instead of it being a perfectly square cube, it's a cube in the proportions of what you're trying to do. Next thing is, how do you divide this? I gotta turn this a little bit and turn. I wish I had like a camera that would just show you directly what's on. The whole reason why I have basically the camera I'm using now is kind of a GoPro, and I bought it and attached it basically to myself. But then the problem I found was that I couldn't really work with, every time I moved, and it moved way too much. But I really wish I could show you exactly from my angle what I'm seeing. Anyway, that's not important. What's important here is the next thing you would say is, what is the next thing you want? What do you want to break this down into? Where's the torso of the horse? Where are the legs? Where's the neck? And where's the head? So for anything that you're drawing, with a human body, you want to start with breaking it down into its largest masses. So the torso of a horse is usually halfway up its entire body. as I'm looking at this, I realized I didn't leave room for the neck. I have to, this isn't like the entire horse. This is just the horse torso. The whole neck would sit up here, and the head would be above that, which I'm now drawing on top of another drawing there. But in a perfect world, I would have been drawing this on a blank sheet of paper where I had plenty of space to draw up above where I'm drawing. Point being is that I'm not getting into horse anatomy yet. I'm just figuring out where are the major parts and then saying, all right, the legs. And for this, I can start with just stick figure legs. And for the horse, only because it helps me remember, the hip is actually up here, the knee is here, and then the ankle is over here. And the fact of the matter is that what we think of as the lower leg, this is actually sort of like the foot. This whole back part is actually the foot, and it's standing on its tippy toes. And that's true of most mammals. You know, what we think of the hoof as being the foot, but the hoof is actually just the toenail. And it's standing on its tippy toes. Now, from here, this is when you start going into anatomy. I'm not going to go into that anatomy right now, but you wouldn't even start going into the anatomy until you simply understand where do these things exist in space. So this is both for Herman and for Hosseini in terms of starting with figuring out where things exist in space. And then once you've got that blocked in, this very, very simple, crude structure, that's when you would go in and you would pull out an anatomy book and say, all right, what is the shape of an actual horse's rib cage? And you would draw that in there. And what is the shape of a horse's thigh muscles? Where are the landmarks for the bones? You might want to take this pose and you would draw it like 3 times. You would draw one where it's just a block diagram. Then you would draw the exact same thing, maybe draw it extremely lightly or erase it down so you could draw on top, and then draw the skeleton of a horse in there so you understand what you're putting the muscles on top of. Then you would draw a third drawing where you draw the actual anatomy, and you repeat this same process that I talked about up here where you name the muscles. Because the muscles of animals, well, we gave them those muscles. Horses don't know what the hell a deltoid is. So all of these muscles have the names that correspond to human anatomy names, and all of those would be in an anatomy book. So again, that's how I would go through in terms of learning all of those things. It's a matter of sitting down and making the practice fun. I know that a lot of this stuff can sound like a drag, but I genuinely enjoy sitting down with art books and just kind of sucking all the knowledge out. And I think if you can change your mindset about pulling information out, if you can learn to enjoy research the way that somebody who hates going to the gym, after doing it for 6 months, it becomes a habit, they crave the gym. They look forward to it. They get to the point where if they skip a day, they not only feel guilty, but they feel antsy because they're like, I need to get back to this. I miss this. Me personally, I've been working a lot the past month, and I've had to skip my figure drawing sessions that I attend in person. It's driving me nuts. I miss it so badly. And I feel like that is a good way to approach in terms of just the mindset for learning, is to make just the fundamental act like a meditation. It's a calming, relaxing, focusing thing. And it's hard, but it's hard work like jogging or lifting weights. When you finish doing it, it may feel challenging while you're doing it, but when you finish doing it, you feel invigorated. You might feel wrung out. You might feel mentally drained, but you also feel like you put in good work. And I think bringing that kind of work ethic, you know what? It's not a work ethic. It's a play ethic. what you want to do is you want to make learning playful. You want to come into it with joy instead of making it drudgery. And if you can approach the learning aspect of drawing with that sense of play, I think you'll find that it will carry you very, very far in learning. Let's see here. All right, let me scroll back up. Oh, quite a bit of comments that I missed. All right, going back up. Let's see here. All right, I think that we're getting to that point in the stream where I stop drawing and just talk to you guys, because there's a lot of questions here. We're like an hour 20. So I'm going to just answer questions. And then if there's anything that I need to draw in order to describe, I'll do that. And hang on, let me scroll through here real quick. I'm just checking because Chris was asking if there's anything important that he missed. I mean, I feel like a lot of the stuff the fundamentals that I was going over are kind of to reference to just the question of how and why I use charcoal pencil. I briefly went over that when you came on, but I would say as I'm answering these questions, if you think of like what are like the fundamental things that you feel like you wish you understood about drawing with charcoal pencil, and post those questions, and I'll try to answer those before we wrap up the stream. Because I'm going to just kind of sit here now. From now on, just focus on answering the rest of the questions and then wrapping things up. So if you throw that question out before we get to the end, then I'll go through that for you as well. Hosseini says, I'm 39 almost, and I just started figure drawing 2 years ago. You know what? I admire you, because a lot of people, the older we get, the less we're willing to want to learn new things. But I will actually say that being more mature and starting the journey of figure drawing, you have an advantage that a lot of young people don't have, which you might feel like you're impatient, but you have far more patience than, say, a 20-year-old. Well, there are some 20-year-olds who are hyper-focused, or they're on Adderall, or whatever it is. They have the ability. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to slam the youth of America, but I will say that people that are older, when we decide to learn something, we can be more systematic about it. We can be more strategic about it. And more importantly, we know ourselves better. And knowing yourself means you can understand what are the carrots and sticks that work to motivate you. Motivating yourself to get work done is, a lot of this really is motivation. I feel like more than anything, what people need is a coach. They just need somebody to encourage them and say, do this and not that. You don't really need somebody to say, here's the secrets to drawing, because the secrets there are no secrets. The answers are all in all of the great art books in history. The secrets are in museums, just going and looking at a great painting and saying, oh, let me just copy how he did that. Oh, my copy looks like crap compared to theirs. Let me understand. Let me try to analyze why mine doesn't look good. It's simply the information is in books and it's in art galleries, and there's people who can just sit there and say, this is the subtle things that they're doing. But for the most part, they're doing very, very simple things very, very well. That is the secret to art. It's not, some sort of genius. It's learning to execute a simple idea with a high degree of competency. And you get that competency through repetition. So when you practice, it's important to understand what you're practicing and why you're practicing it. That's building competency in the right things. But that's really what it comes down to. When people talk about quote unquote fundamentals, value, proportion, gesture, anatomy, that's all it is. You learn those things And once you learn them, you're like, oh, well, you have all of the tools to be a master artist once you learn that those things exist, but you haven't sharpened the tools. And that's the difference between you and someone who does amazing work. They've simply sharpened the fundamentals. You keep sharpening the fundamentals. You keep pushing the fundamentals. You keep experimenting with the fundamentals. Once you master the fundamentals, then you start challenging them. You say, well, how can I break the ideas of the fundamentals or use them in ways no one else has done before? That's when you get people that are doing groundbreaking work. But the tools can be taught to a child. It's what you do with them. Let's see here. Herman says, I get it, brother. He says at Hosseini. He says, I'm 52, but still sketching and drawing. I mentioned to Jeremy about being a caregiver, just finding time to get back to my art now. So the journey is real. Yeah, and that's the thing. I think that human expression is something that calls to all of us. For some people, it's in theater. For some people, it's music. For some people, it's drawing, painting, sculpture. But, whether you're making a living as a creative person or not, art has a place in our lives. It gives us something. And I think that call, that need for creative expression, that's the reason to do art. And for me, I look at the only reason to try and make a business out of it is so that I can spend more time during the day doing the thing that I love. But it's like I make art because I need to. And I think that following that, sometimes people just get so frustrated or they get scared that they're going to fail, that they freeze up. When really, the most important thing, I think, is being in the moment and learning how to express and deciding what it is that you want to express. And then that may not ever lead to financial gains. It really may not. I mean, I remember talking to I ran into an art professor I had in college at a movie theater with my wife years ago. And I told him, he asked what I was up to. And I said, I work as a toy designer. And he was overjoyed to hear that, because he was kind of like, yeah, very few people actually end up using their art degrees when they graduate from school. And the thing is, I went to a fine art college. So it was not an illustration program like Art Center. It was definitely a program for video installations and sculptures and art experiences. They didn't really necessarily care if you could draw you out of a paper bag. So, but he was very happy to see that I took the art and went into that business. But I use drawing in my work, but I don't make my living as an illustrator. I publish comic books, but I'm not living off of making comics exclusively. And the only reason for wanting to get better at it and to make more money from it is so that I can do more of it, because it's the thing I'm really passionate about. But I'm very, very lucky that I get to do something creative right now. But my whole point of that rant is lean into that desire to create and use that desire to create to fuel your desire to learn. And learn, because learning how to do this better is exciting and will make you more invigorated about the things that you create. I can't guarantee that that's going to lead you to fame or fortune or wealth as an artist, because it hasn't done that for me. But what I can tell you is that it will enrich your spirit, your soul. And that's what I think you should pursue. Let's see here. Martin commented some great quotes here. He says, work on the wall where it's weakest. Yes, that's the thing. I like to sit down and hammer on the things that that are challenging to me. And James also says, man, German Expressionism is a minefield for inspiration. That's very true. I remember The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. I saw that in a film in college, in a class on horror films. It was one of the early horror films. So here, Herman says, good work, James. Got to praise people to keep it going. I didn't have enough of that growing up. Word. Yeah, we all... I mean, I'll tell you, that's one of the things I love about live streaming is sitting here, and I try to share with you. That whole thing, that rant I went on is about not feeling like the work, not making the work drudgery, to try and find joy in it. Like kind of a Buddhist meditative approach towards being in the moment and enjoying the work. And sometimes the work is hard, sometimes it's easy, and sometimes it goes well, and sometimes it doesn't. But trying to find joy in that and being able to share that with you and having you guys share that with me. Because if we can turn our struggle into joy, we can thrive. And that's that's what I enjoy sharing. I enjoy talking about that with you guys. So here, Hosseini says, I wish you good luck with your art journey, Herman. And I wish him good luck as well. James says, right, people say you're so talented, but I feel that's dismissive of the skill involved. And that goes back to the whole the art versus talent versus skill conversation. So that shows you how far back I am in the comments, that I'm just getting to James' reply to that now. Dylan says, if I remember correctly, the goat is fine. In the movie The Witch, that there's a goat. And he says, if I remember correctly, the goat is fine. The goat, Black Phillip, is the devil in the movie. Well, that's good to know. That said, the trailer makes it look like there's something that's gonna happen. And my wife cannot enjoy a movie if she's sitting there the whole time feeling like an animal is going to be hurt. It's too upsetting. She's an animal person. She's an animal lover. She's deeply connected. And just the threat of danger to an animal will she can't enjoy the experience. So I'm probably going to have to watch The Witch by myself. La Magma Music is in the chat. Thank you for joining. And says, why, oh, why isn't Willem Dafoe playing the vampire Nosferatu? Just why? Well, I mean, he already had a bite at the apple before in that movie Shadow of the Vampire, where it was about it was a film on the making of the original Nosferatu, and John Malkovich played the director, F. Murnau. I think it's F.W. Murnau. And Willem Dafoe played Nosferatu in that movie. So it makes sense. He's already done that. And Willem Dafoe is in this new movie. But I can't remember whether he's playing the father of, because I don't, it's not Dracula, so it's not Van Helsing and the Harkers, but I think he plays the father of a young woman that the vampire is trying to seduce. Regardless, Willem Dafoe has collaborated with Robert Eggers on a few different movies, and he's in this Nosferatu movie as well. And I think that it's intentional that he would be in it anyway because Robert Eggers likes working with him. But the fact that he has already played the vampire in one movie and is now being a different character in the same story, it works for me. And yes, he could play Nosferatu again because he's Willem Dafoe and he's great at that. But, he's had the shot. And you can see him as Nosferatu in Shadow of the Vampire, which I actually want to go back and rewatch. I haven't seen it in ages. See here. Herman says, appreciated, but I'm back at it, taking time. Hosseini says, time. I've decided to practice more wisely too. Time is the hardest part in all of this, because even though I tell you just 30 minutes a day or 30 minutes 3 times a week, I realized after sitting down and doing some sketching yesterday that it had been 2 weeks since I sat down and drew for pleasure. That's how busy I've been with work. Now, mind you, some of the freelance work I've been doing has involved doing some sketching, not figure drawing, but some sketching. So that has actually helped in alleviating that. But yeah, finding the time, scheduling it, and sticking to it, that's not easy. It's simple, but simple and easy are not two things. So it's it does take discipline. And if anything, the scheduling part is an exercise in building discipline, which is one of the things we need in order to create.
So look at that. Look at discipline as yet another skill that you're practicing. Let's see here. Dylan says, my 8th grade science teacher was really good at drawing, but his vehicles were really great. Well, that's cool. Let's see here. Herman says, definitely suck at drawing horses. So a lot of work. I'm amazed how people can draw animals so easy. I think I just don't love that enough to focus. I like faces, anatomy, perspective. Well, you know, I learned to draw horses because I was drawing a Western comic book. And I think I chose to do that because it was two things. I chose something that I knew would be challenging to me, but I also studied something because I was doing a book that had something challenging. And I have that mindset of, if the story I want to tell has something hard in it, I don't shy away from it. I try to learn how to do the thing that's hard. But I think that leaning into faces, anatomy, and perspective makes sense. And what will happen is, as you develop more and more skill and refine these abilities, as you get better, you will get more ambitious. And that's when you will decide, I want to reach out. I want to challenge myself. And that's when you'll lean into the harder things like horses or animal drawing. And again, animal drawing is another thing that I have multiple books on the subject that I haven't gone through. But I myself, again, I did that quick diagram of a horse. Those are things that I learned from a book called The Art of Animal Drawing by Ken Holtgren. And that's, that book is a great, simple, kind of like the Walt Reads the Figure book in terms of it starting with basic volumes and simple anatomy. But lean into the things that you're really passionate about. Get good at those. And as you get better, you'll get more ambitious. Herman says, I love complex details. Vicini says, I love analytical drawing. Well, you two sound like you should definitely have an art study group because you guys love a lot of the same stuff. Hosseini says, Scott Robertson has 2 books, Aces and Nomen videos. The Scott Robertson, he has the How to Draw and How to Render books. I do not have the How to Render book. I only have the How to Draw book. But then I have another book that he published before that's on vehicle drawing. And I want to say that he might actually have a couple of other books. If you go to Design Studio Press, that's actually the press that he started for some of his fellow Art Center instructors to publish basically some of their ideas and their teachings as books. There's a really great book that he basically, I think he's sort of the editor of. I think there may actually be a different person who edited it, but it's called The Skillful Huntsman. And what Scott Robertson did is he took an assignment that he would give in his class for a Grimm's fairy tale, and to have his students go through and design all the character designs, then all of the vehicle designs, then all the environment designs. And basically the book's a collection of 5 of his students and all of their different works and their approaches to that. And I think it's an excellent book. If you're interested in concept art, concept development, and world building, the Skillful Huntsman is an excellent book from Design Studio Press. And I highly, highly recommend getting that. Let's see here. Chris says that car that I drew, it says, looks like a tank with all those wheels. It kind of does. But I mean, you put a roll of wheels on any box, it's going to look like a tank. Herman says, your care is better than me. I'm looking at Sean Murphy, Insane Vehicle Detail. When he draws Batman, he said the dude is sick. I want my stuff to be complex looking. Well, Sean Murphy, the thing is, he's a car guy. He loves cars the way that some people love horses or airplanes or just figures. And it's amazing that he's that good at vehicles while still also good at the actual sequential storytelling and the action and the anatomy of the human figures. But he's drawing something because he's passionate about it. If you want to I mean, if you want to do the kind of stuff that he does, I would say Herman, just like Hosseini has done, I would lean into Scott Robertson. He's one of the best people to learn how to draw vehicles from. He draws amazing dynamic vehicles. But yeah, it's sitting down and doing intentional practice and study. And also maybe getting a camera and taking your own photographs, and taking photographs where you intentionally get right next to the car so that you're getting that fisheye distortion, because that's one of the things that Sean Gordon Murphy excels at, is making you feel like the vehicles are coming at you and moving through space. He knows how to exaggerate it just enough that the vehicle is not just an inert object. He makes it feel alive. And a lot of that is with camera angles. And those are things that you really get and you learn, not just from looking at a book, but sitting and looking at real life, getting in front of a car, drawing it from weird angles, sitting like right up by the bumper and looking at it and trying to do like perspective where it's distorted at the edges. Taking a lot of photographs and seeing what it looks like when you photograph the car from the same angle, but standing 10 feet away versus standing a foot away at that same angle versus standing like, 20 or 30 feet away. That's a really good exercise, is to take photographs of vehicles, same perspective, different distances, and then doing studies from that and seeing how the perspective changes. Let's see here. Hosseini says, I don't like drawing new cars and spaceships and robots. Well, you know what? I mean, like I said, lean into the things you're passionate about. And you'll be surprised how much over time you'll want to challenge yourself with drawing things that you thought you hated. Herman says, I think I want to create my own animation. I was messing with Blender at one point. So I was doing Quick Sketch 2D and trying to create it in Blender and keep it simple. Yeah, I mean, these digital tools are all very handy. Procreate has a tool in it where you can import 3D models like Clip Studio Paint and use them to draw from reference. I definitely think that having 3D there is a tool. I have not worked 3D into my comic creating or my illustration workflow, but I do wish to do so because I think it's a very handy tool. I just haven't spent enough time. Spent all the time working on these fundamentals in the 2D that I haven't had enough time to learn enough 3D to make it useful to make my 2D art better. And Hosseini says Marshall Vandroff has a course on perspective. Yeah, he recently had a course from Proco that he'd been working on for years, and he just started releasing that. And I actually really like Marshall Vandroff's teaching. I've watched some of his YouTube videos. I haven't taken any of his actual courses, but I think he's a great teacher. Other students I know who have studied with him in person speak very highly of him. So I definitely think he's definitely worth checking out. And yeah, Hosseini mentions it right there. He says that he has a new perspective course on Proco too. He says the old one's on VHS, but it's very complete. And Herman says, CG, I can tell you draw a horse all the time. He says, I'd be struggling, but thank you for whipping to do the right thing. Yeah, I mean, I would say that even now, that quick horse diagram that I drew, I would say for somebody that drew a Western comic book, for someone who has done that, I draw horses very poorly. I should be much better at horses for somebody who drew 8 issues of a Western. But I feel like at the end of every project, that's just a starting point. I learn so much from everything I do and everything I make that when I finish, the challenges that I face in the process of making any given comic or any piece of art usually help dictate what I'm going to make next. Because I look at what I'm struggling with when I'm making the comic or the illustration, and I say, okay, I need to get better at this. And then I tend to put the things I would need to get better at in the next project. So I'm kind of learning into my art making. And that's another good practice, is you don't want to, studying endlessly can be boring. It can be mind-numbing. You can feel like you're just treading your tires. Whereas making learning into a project, if you want to get better at color, then you might decide, all right, well, I'm going to do a comic book in color. Or if you want to get better at landscape painting, you might decide, all right, I'm going to paint an art book or an art series. You might do something that has something you're really, really good at, like anatomy, but you might say anatomy in the wild, where you've got a figure standing in a landscape, and the landscape painting, the thing that you're bad at is the background for the thing that you're good at. So you might combine the two. The point is working projects into learning is a great way to keep yourself motivated. Hosseini said, I think you must be passionate about the subject. I am very passionate about learning in art in general, all things. Like, there's not enough lifetimes for me to learn all the things I want to learn. And yes, I'm passionate about it because it lights me up. It's fun. It's exciting. And Dylan right there, he says it's like crack. Very true. Hosseini says, I'm sorry for asking every question except charcoal questions. I'm fine with that. I'm here to answer whatever you guys want to learn. And again, if there's questions later on about charcoal drawing, I'm happy to answer those in another live stream. But I do think I'm going to try and really focus on just wrapping up the questions here. Let's see here. Herman says, right, Jeremy, I'm finding I need art and I was neglecting my soul. It was making me somewhat depressed. But since I got back into art after my father passed, it shows that I need to do it. And by the way, I'm sorry for your loss. But yeah, I think that art is a form of meditation, and it's a form of calming and centering and focusing. And I think it helps us get through other challenging aspects of our life. That's one of the things I think art is incredibly valuable at. Herman says, I'm thumbnailing every day down with a black pen, with a black gel pen, basically black and white, positive and negative. I'm noticing my thumbnails are getting more clean, clearer read, so that's good. Yes, I am a big advocate of thumbnailing. It's probably my favorite aspect of art making because it's just working through all of the imaginative possibilities. It's drawing imagination on the page. That's what thumbnailing is. It's getting your mind out on the page. It's so fun. Herman says, I love concept art. I love designing. Always a dream to work with Jim Henson, Creature Shop, George Lucas, or James Cameron. You know what? Don't give up on these dreams. Make the things that you would make if you worked with those people. That's what you do, because honestly, opportunities come to those who make their own opportunity. Let's see here. Ichigo Senpai joining in the chat says, hi there. I love arting birds and I'm good at bird art. Let's see here. Everyone has their art style. You know what? And that's beautiful that you already know the thing that you really love drawing and that you enjoy. And thank you for joining us in the stream here. Herman says, yes, it does get boring, but I absorb so much art trying to condense what I need and what I want to focus on. And I will tell you that is a struggle that I share. Hang on, I'm going to just sit this down, point that at it, and I need to turn because I'm starting to get a stiff neck from looking at the screen at an angle. So I'm going to turn this so it's facing the board, but I'm going to rotate myself so that I'm not sitting here, getting a crick in my neck. I need to turn and fully face you guys. Yeah, that was getting really hard on my neck. Let's see here. Ichigo Senpai says, I know I'm trying to art better at the head and it's not easy, but I'm trying to trick myself to my favorite thing and make it easier, but I'm trying to get better. Well, I will tell you a great trick. Again, I said, when I was talking earlier about landscapes, I said combining something you're good at with something you're bad at. What I would do is try drawing a head with a bird sitting on top of the head. And I would do a series of birds from different angles and heads from different angles. And almost like, for instance, hang on. I have a skull, a drawing skull that I use for reference. It's not a real human skull. It's plastic. It's resin. But if you were to take something like this and just pose it like you were going to do a still life, and then either imaginary draw different types of birds, what I would just say is just try to imagine drawing a skull or a head in different angles. And for each angle, put a different bird standing on top. So you know you're going to practice the thing that you're really good at. And maybe the birds are all sitting there just standing. Maybe the birds have their wings spread. Maybe a bird is pecking at the head. It doesn't matter what it is. Make it fun for yourself. Make up stuff. Find ways to make it interesting for you. But you will find that by combining the thing that you enjoy with the thing that challenges you, that will make learning the challenging thing that much more enjoyable. I need to write that down because I think I'm going to try and work that into the title of this live stream. Originally, the live stream was just going to be about charcoal drawing, but combining joy and challenge. Let's see here. Let's see here. Okay. So Mike has a question, and I'm sorry it took me a while. There's a lot of comments. I'm slowly getting through them. But I appreciate your patience. Mike says, how do you write the stories you use for comics? I am going to paste a video in the comments because I did an hour-long video on my writing process. And I am just going to paste this because this video is my most watched video. And I don't say that like a brag. I'm saying that I am grateful that I actually produced something that is genuinely helpful to other creatives. And because I feel like I am still learning and growing. So to be able to produce something that is useful and inspiring to other creators, that's the most humbling thing I can think of, is to give back to the art community. All right. So, Mike, for later, you can go back and watch this video. But the quick summary of how I write my stories is I start with my idea, whatever it is that made you say, it'd be fun to have this character do this thing. Or I imagine this world or this premise. What you need to do is I start with a summary. And the idea of that summary is to break my premise down into a beginning, a middle, and an end. This character starts in this situation with this problem. They come into conflict, and the conflict becomes more complicated because of whatever you throw in their path. And then how do they resolve the story? If you can break your beginning, your middle, if you can break your beginning of your story, your middle of your story, and the end of your story into a couple of sentences, that's the beginning. That's your summary. That's all it is. It's just what's your beginning, what's your middle, what's your end. Treat it as if you were sitting down with a friend and you were actually going to tell them. Let's say you just saw a movie and somebody said, "Oh, what's it about?" And like you're in an elevator or you're just walking down the street and you really just have like 1 or 2 minutes to tell them the whole, like, what it's about, that's what you need to do. And when I say that, I make it sound simple. The result is simple. Boiling a story down is not easy. It's a simple, what you're making is a simple statement, but to do it, you may have to sit there and write a bunch of iterations until you get a summary that you're happy with. Once you have the summary, then you say, all right, well, how many pages is this going to be? Is it a 24-page comic? Is it an 8-page story? Is it a 4-issue miniseries? Once you do that, you just create a list of, all right, if it's a 4-issue miniseries, what happens in issue 1? What happens in issue 2? What happens in issue 3? What happens in issue 4? If it's an 8-page story, you just create a numbered list. Page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, blah, 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 down to page 8. And then you just write one sentence describing what happens on each page. Maybe 2 if you really need it. But the point of limiting how long the sentences are is to keep you from overwriting, because inevitably you will cram too much stuff into your story. Period. That is just the nature of learning how to write. You cram too much into your stories in the beginning, and it takes a while and lots of stories before you get over that. I still fight it. Once you have that, then you can take that simple 1-sentence description of the page and break that down into panels. You repeat that with the panels, 1 sentence per panel. Well, actually, what I tend to do is I say you get 1 sentence to describe the action, and you can limit it to 1 action per panel. You don't have multiple things going on in a single panel. You say, this character punches that character. This character picks up a glass. This character opens a door. Whatever it is, you can make it as exciting as you want. And you can also describe, you can put in, if you want to have an extra sentence for description of the room or the clothing or some details, you can add that as well. You can get bonus sentences for that, but really you want to say there's 1 action happening. You describe that action, and you get 1 sentence for dialogue. Now, again, you can have 2 characters talking in one panel. So you might have sentence A and sentence B, character A, character B. But the point is you want to keep it as simple and stripped down as possible. And then from there, by the time you're done with that, you've got a script now. Then you start thumbnailing it, and then you draw it. That's how I make comics. And if you have follow-up questions, please feel free to ask. I know that I rented that off like that's the be-all, end-all. There are a million different approaches to writing as well as art. So there's always room for follow-up questions. There's always room for different approaches. A lot of people hate outlining. I love outlining. My process may not work for somebody who really hates outlining, although I still feel like it's useful for if you were to write by the seat of your pants and make up the story as you go along. I still think that the process I use is useful for editing your story afterwards, even if you don't like outlining. But there's always multiple ways to approach it. And I think that the approach I use is very simple and it's direct, but it's by no means the only way to approach writing. And you need to find what works for you best. Let's see here. Ichigo Senpai says, focus on your favorite. And they say, I'm trying to get better at canvas art. I have not painted on canvas in years, but I miss it. I miss painting in general. I mostly am working either digital or I'm working in pen and ink these days, but I do want to get back into painting because I'm in an environment now where I'm surrounded by other painters, people that are, making, painting in oils, painting in acrylics, painting in watercolor, and being around them makes you want to get back into that more. So we'll see. Let's see here. Cindy says, thanks for the time, Jeremy. Appreciate it. Do you have 2 channels? I don't have 2 channels, but what I do is I have videos that I do exclusively for Patreon, and those are unlisted, so they don't show up on YouTube, but I post the links to those to my YouTube channel and our Patreon exclusive Discord server. And the Patreon is just $2 a month. So if you want to sign up for that, it's just, I'm not used to doing this in the middle of the stream because I usually do it at the beginning and the end. But it's just patreon.com/Jeremy. And really what I do is throughout the week, I share more of what I'm doing here. So I either share, I do two live streams a month usually for Patreon subscribers. And then in between that, I'll just post sketches with a little bit of writing about what I'm working on, my thoughts about the creative process. I answer your guys' questions. We talk back and forth. So it's just more of a continuation of the experience we're having here during the live stream. The one thing I will say is that when I do the Patreon live streams, we have a voice channel on Discord. So as opposed to typing, you can just get on and actually verbally chat and talk with me on the mic, and we can talk back and forth. So that's a nice added feature that we have. But again, like I said, that's patreon.com/GERIMI. So that's how you can find me there if you want to hop on for that. So no, we just have the one channel, but you can. People who don't actually do upload videos don't necessarily know that you can have public videos that everyone can see. You can have unlisted videos that only people can see if you share the link, and then you can have private videos that only you have access to. So let's see here. Oh, that's weird. Okay. James said he couldn't hear me, and they said the volume was off. I wanted to look and make sure that my volume wasn't off. Herman says, I have a chiropractor. Think about it, Jeremy. I just needed to turn. That was the main thing I needed in order to keep, because I was sitting here doing this for like an hour, and I was like, okay, I need to move. And I still have been trying to figure out a nice setup. I haven't found a nice balance between having my camera angled above my table and then being able to have my drawing board so that I can be facing you guys and working. In my new studio setup, this is the closest I've gotten to, is just having an easel to the side and then turning and facing that. But it's not perfect. So I may still need to play with my setup to get myself perfectly happy with it. Let's see here. Cindy says, I saw a similar channel, and I think it was yours. It might be possible that you saw my channel before I changed the icon to my name. So it's just GERIMI. There used to be one where the icon was just my head, just a photo of me in front of the cover of my book. So it might be just an older, you might be my channel when it was older. I have heard of people scraping YouTube channels, downloading the videos, and then re-uploading them on their own to try and create like a fake channel. So it might be that somebody has a fake channel of me also. I don't see how that helps them, but people do that sometimes. I don't know. People are weird. Cindy says, I like helping younger artists too. I like to feel useful. I mean, I feel helpful. I'm glad if I can provide anything that helps any other creative person, because everything I know, pardon me, I have to cough. Everything I know about art was either directly taught to me by a more experienced artist, or someone gave me the resources, told me to look at particular books, particular courses, particular pieces of information. And I just look at it as a continuum, whether we're an older artist, a younger artist. There are artists younger than me by at more than a decade who I'll watch their stream, or I will buy an art book or a course from and learn from them, because I don't want to be somebody who is older. I mean, I'm in my high 40s. I'm getting close to 52. I'm getting close to 50 as well. My point is, I don't want to be somebody who, because I'm older, refuses to learn from somebody younger than me, because there's many people of any age. If somebody has something to offer, I want to learn. So, and by the same token, if I can share anything that helps anybody else, no matter where they are in their journey, I'm grateful to be able to share. Let's see here. Mike says, thanks. Cool. Thanks. You're welcome. Glad to help. Herman says, word, Jeremy. I was curious about your writing process. I needed that. Trying to do small 4-frame comics. You know what? And it's smart that you're keeping it simple. I keep trying to write one-shots, and they keep growing into 4 and 8-issue series. I absolutely believe that it's better to start with small and simple and 1-page or 4-panel comics. It's a better way to build strength. But I find myself not following that advice. I know that it's easier to get the ongoing practice of making something, finishing, and getting it out there. But I keep writing stories that are just more and more complex. So I have my own things that I'm pushing against in terms of trying to simplify. And hey, my buddy Corey Kerr is in the chat. He says, Saturday stream. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to stream tomorrow. So I thought, why don't I hop on today? And like I said, I'll let you guys know if I'm going to do any more streams for the end of the year. But given just the holiday schedules and spending time with family, this might be the last one of the year. So if I don't see you guys again, Happy New Year. Hope you guys have a happy and healthy holiday season and are safe and do something that's creative and that feeds your soul. So, all right, we're getting close here to the end. Herman says, oh yeah, I saved your writing process. Now I have something to watch at work while thumbnailing. Thank you, G. I appreciate your channel. It's a blessing for the soul. It warms my heart to hear that. Thank you. Mike says, awesome. Thanks for the breakdown. That was really helpful. And you are welcome. Chris says, when you outline a story, what does that, well, yeah, that's what I just mentioned about the summary, and then breaking the summary down into pages and then breaking that down into panels. That is an outline. Like I said, that video that I went into, that video that I put the link in the chat for, goes very deep into my process. But what I described to you verbally there, that is my outline. So, and if you have a follow-up question based on that, by all means, throw that out there. But okay, we're at the last couple of comments. Herman says, do you check out people's art during Patreon? He said maybe that would be cool. If so, if not, I will definitely still swing by there when you do live, or swing by here when you do live. Yes. I full on people post work in the our Patreon Discord server. Pardon me. And part of our Patreon live streams is I will pull up people's work and I'll do drawovers, get feedback, try to provide useful information in the same way that I will go through and do diagrams here on my drawings. For instance, like when Jim Lujan had asked about drawing, keeping characters consistent in terms of a comic, I would if he were to post a character in the stream, I would do a drawover like this on his character digitally, and then I would do it where I would draw the breakdowns of different angles. So if there's anything that you wanted me to look at, that's one of the things that we do on Patreon, is I'll do drawovers of your work. I can do those live, and I can do those live during, it's a Patreon exclusive live stream. So it's not like the public is watching your stuff. It's just something that I'm doing with you guys. But I can go through, give you feedback. We can actually be talking in real time, so you can ask follow-up questions live while I do those drawovers. And then also on the Patreon Discord server, we'll just, people will post stuff. We have a channel specifically, a request for feedback channel. And I can do drawings, on there, even if I'm not doing it live, where I can just pull up an image, do some diagrams, drawing on top of it, give some notes, corrections, feedback, that sort of thing. Let's see here. And Hosseini says, I'd love to be a part of your Patreon, but Patreon blocked me, even though I'm connected with VPN. Blocked my email, even though I'm connected with VPN. That is really weird. I don't know why it would block you. I apologize for that. Yeah, I'm not sure what the solution is, but I would definitely love to have you on there. Feel free to keep messaging me, both commenting here and I mean, you can email me as well. My email is on my my homepage if you go into the additional links in there. Yeah, if we can figure out a way to get you on there, then I'd be happy to do it, just to have you there and continue sharing more of the process. All right, guys. Yeah. On that note, we're going to wrap things up here. So definitely hit that like button. Hosseini also asks, do you have a newsletter or a site? Yes, I do have a newsletter. If you go to newsletter.jeremy.net, I have a free monthly newsletter I send out once a month. I did not send one out for December, but again, that is a rare thing for me. I usually never miss a month, but my work schedule has been nuts this particular month, so I have not done that. But generally speaking, I send out a newsletter once a month. And it's just a collection of, works in progress, thoughts on the creative process. You get a free digital download of a sketchbook. It's a rough sketch version of my comic Morningstar, the first issue. In addition to that, I'll just give notes on what I'm watching, what I'm inspiring, what I'm reading, what's inspiring me creatively. So head on over to newsletter.jeremy.net. You can sign up for that there. Again, the Patreon link, patreon.com/Jeremy. And then if you want to purchase physical copies of my books, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. I'll purchase my Amazon author page. So you can get books like my first graphic novel. I need to turn this light off. There's too much reflection going on in here. Actually, you know what? This might work better with this light on and one of these off, because these are, well, they'll get really dark in here. Point being is there's always a glare when I'm trying to show you guys the book. So Eye of the Gods is a standalone psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. Then my next series is it's a retelling of Lucifer's fall from heaven as a Western. So this is called Morningstar. So it's an 8-issue series. Volume 1 contains issues 1 through 4. Volume 2 contains the conclusion, issues 5 through 8. So both volumes have extensive back matter. There's thumbnails, photo reference, script, excerpts, page layouts. I basically show you how I put the entire comic book together. And if you go to the homepage of my YouTube channel and scroll down to book flip-throughs, there are flip-through videos. You can actually see what's inside of the books before picking them up. All right, guys. On that note, let's see here. Herman says, what time or days are your Patreon live streams? In case I have it like that. Said, but if you create a Check People Art channel, great, but good to have one. So what I usually do, generally speaking, the live streams, the Patreon live streams used to be twice a month, and I would do them on the first and third Monday of each month. Now, I've recently had some schedules changes because of work, so I think I might be moving that to either Tuesday or Wednesday. I haven't decided which day I'll move to next, but I am going to be moving them to a different day of the week. Now, mind you, much in the same way that these live streams are saved so that you can watch them later, that's also true with the Patreon live streams. So if you go on there now, there's an archive. You'll see a link. If you just look up Art Book Study Group, there'll be just an ongoing link of like hours and hours and hours of live streams of all the previous Patreon live streams where I've been, going through. And a lot of those are just me solo working through art books. But there are some where I have people coming on and asking questions and me giving them feedback on their work. So it's a variety. But let's see here. All right, guys. On that last note, by the way, and thank you for the kind words, Herman. It says, peace to the chat. It says much success in your art endeavors. And it says that Morningstar looks as if it would be great as an animation. You know what? Here's hoping. Netflix, I'm available. Holla at me. All right, guys. That's it for now. Go be creative.